I would like to show you right now the basic process of sales order creation using advanced product configurator. We will start with creating sales order. Let's go to the sales orders, let's create new one, and we'll pick a customer that the sales order will be created for. As the next step, we'll go into configuration using new configuration action. When this action is used, system will open new configuration card. This is where we'll configure our item. We need to start with choosing proper configuration type. As I mentioned, configuration type is the group of items that share the same characteristics for which we need to specify the same set of attributes. After configuration type was chosen, we get the list of attributes that can be specified for that group of items. In our case, that will be cargo e-bike. On the right side, we can also see the description of the attribute, which helps the user to understand what exactly the characteristic is about. This also gives the additional information to the users. Let's fill in the attributes for our example. We'll start with the bike intended use. Let's make it animal transport, and we'll pick a number of wheels. Please note that for animal transport, we have two options here available. That's two-wheel or three-wheel bicycle. We will pick two wheels. Now let's change the bike intended use to child transport. If we go back to number of wheels, please note that now we only have one option left. That's only three-wheel bicycle. That's for safety reasons. Here you can see that the attributes can depend on each other. List of possible values can be limited based on other attributes. Let's get back to animal transport. Let's define other attributes. We'll make the bicycle green. We need to define the information about cyclist. Let's choose the frame type. We'll make it carbon. And then we'll give the information about the battery, voltage and battery capacity. Please note that when this is done, we have some attributes calculated automatically. In our case, this is estimated range that was calculated based on the battery voltage and battery capacity. Let's change the voltage to another value. We'll make it 48 volts. And let's pick the battery capacity again. Now estimated range was recalculated, as you can see. Let's fill in the remaining attributes. I will add the anti-theft protection and rain cover. When this is done, the next step is to test the configuration. When configuration is tested, system fills in some of the fields in the configuration header. It generates automatically the item number that will be created, description, but it also checks all the relations between the characteristics, and it checks if the attribute values were defined properly. After this is done, we can run the configuration. In this moment, system generates new item card and also creates sales order line, as you can see. We have the sales order line created. It's enough to define the quantity in that line. Price is also calculated by the system automatically based on the attributes we used when configuring the item. Now let's take a closer look at the item card that was created and at the master data that was generated by the system. For our example, we'll open the item card. So let's see the e-bike that system created in our process. Note that the item number and item description were generated automatically. System also defined the units of measures for that item. Let's scroll down and let's see the replenishment fast tab. Please note that the routing and production BOM were also generated automatically by the system. Now let's take a look at item translations. Here we can see that system generated 3 translations for the item in German, English and Polish. The list of languages, that's of course just a matter of setup. Translations can be generated for other set of languages if needed. Let's take a look at item extended text. As you can see, for the same set of languages, system generated extended text. Lines of the extended text were generated based on the attributes we chose when configuring the item. Let's go back and let's take a look at the production structure. Here you can see what items were generated by the system. Please note that system generated not only the top level items, so cargo e-bike, but it also generated new item cards for the lower level items, for the semi-finished items. What's more, it created the production BOM, but it also created routings. And finally, let's look at the prices. You already saw on the sales order that the price was calculated automatically. System also generated a line in our price list with that price. But one might ask, what's the setup behind all of that? So let's take a look at the setup that is that is required behind the scenes. As I mentioned, it all starts with the configuration types. So let's see the configuration type list in our system. This is the list of all the groups of items that we can configure. In our case, we'll focus on the cargo e-bike. For each of those groups, we can specify attributes that can be defined. In this case, we just opened the configuration type card where you have the basic information about the configuration, like the code description, but here you can also specify the template item and the setup related to how system will generate item number. Let's go to attributes list. On this list, we can see attributes that can be picked when configuring an item. This is the list of attributes. For each attribute, we also have the information about the attribute value type, the sequence in which attributes might appear or should appear, and also if the attribute is required during the configuration or not. For the attributes that do not have the list of values, we can also define threshold in this place. Let's take a look at the list of possible values for battery capacity. This is the list of possible values. On that list, you can also specify the sequence in which the list will appear. Here we can also specify which value is a default one for this specific attribute when configuring an item. What's also important here, you can specify what surcharges will be applied on the document if customer decides to buy an item with that specific attribute value. From that list, we can open conditions. Conditions specify when this specific attribute value can be chosen. In our case, battery capacity depends on the battery voltage. That capacity can be chosen only if the voltage is set as 24 or 36 volt. This is a very simple example, but we can make much more complex formulas here using mathematical operations and that are based not only on one attribute, but also on the other attributes defined for the specific item. Let's go back. And let's take a look at the BOM-related setup. This is the list of BOM templates. On that list, you can find component groups that can be defined in the BOM. For each group, you can specify if a component from that group is mandatory, and also if only one component from that group can appear. Let's take a look at the BOM line. So this is the list of components that belong to that category that can be added to the production BOM. Please note that here we not only have items, but we also have configuration types. Configuration type can be used in case of multi-level production BOMs when we have a semi-finished item that should be generated by the system as well. Additionally, you can limit the components that should be used by the system using formulas, condition formulas that we saw also a moment ago. Then we have quantity formulas that are used to define what's the quantity of components that should be used in the production BOM. In this case, we base the backlight quantity on the number of wheels. Let's go back. And here we have another set of places where you can specify the setup that is used by the system when creating item card and master data. That is used for the units of measures, dimensions, descriptions, translations, lead times, and many more. On the other fast tabs, you can also see the setup related to BOMs, prices, and routings. As the next step, I would like to shortly describe you one of the cases where we implemented Advanced Product Configurator. Let's take a look at the case study of furniture manufacturing company. In this case, we'll talk about the process from receiving an order to creating a production order and automatic generation of CNC programs. In this case, we have a customer who has this process. The customer places an order in the web shop, then the order is imported to Business Central. People from the customer company had to calculate the price, send the order confirmation, then they had to specify all the components that were needed for this specific product. They had to create item cards in the system, generate the setup related to the production BOMs and routings, and then finally they could create a production order in the system. The whole process that you can see in the middle was taking around 3 days for that customer. During the implementation of Advanced Product Configurator, we automated that. So basically from the moment when the order was placed by the customer to the moment when the company can create production order, it takes less than a minute because all the steps in between are fully automated using our Advanced Product Configurator. Let's see how such process can look like if we would go through that in manual manner, of course. So we'll show you one more example where we create a bookshelf configuration. We will go to new configuration one more time, but this time we will focus on bookcases. We'll pick the bookcase configuration type and we'll define furniture size. We will add the color, let's make it natural wood, finish, and then we'll add the information about drawers, number of columns and rows. Finally, we'll add handle type. Now we will test and run the configuration. As you can see, this process takes a little bit longer because this is much more complex example than a bicycle. System created a document line, so we'll put a quantity and then we'll generate a production order. Now let's open the production order card. Please note that on this production order we have much more complex example. As you can see, the number of semi-finished items used in that finished item is pretty high. Let's focus on one of them, that's a shelf board. For that item, we will go to routings. Here from the routing line, we can generate CNC program for that specific line. We also have an option to generate CNC programs for all the routing lines in the production order, but for our example, we'll just generate it for one of them. Now let's take a look at that CNC program that was generated. We'll preview it. Please see that in the lines we have a CNC program that was generated fully automatically based on the attributes defined when creating the configuration and the product. This program can then be downloaded and used in one of our machines. As the last thing, I would like to show you the Shopify integration. This is work in process. It is not part of the last release, but this is something we're working on right now. So we'll go through the same process, but from the Shopify level. We'll create new configuration. We'll get back to our cargo e-bike example. As you can see on the Shopify website, system shows all the attributes that we have defined also in Business Central. In this case, they have default values defined, but we will correct them. Let's pick the frame type. Let's add the battery information as we did in Business Central. We'll also add the rain cover, and now we'll calculate the price. Please note that from the Shopify website, we also have the information related to estimated range, so automatically calculated attributes also are visible here, and we have the price that was calculated by the system. We'll add the bike to shopping cart, and now let's go to the shop cart. In this place, as you can see, we have the information about the cargo e-bike that we have just configured, together with the information related to all the attributes that we specified. Let's check out. We'll skip the process of defining the payment method, and we'll basically go directly to Business Central. Let's get the orders from Shopify. We'll sync the orders. In this case, we'll get one order that we just created with one line. Note that some of the information is missing in the lines. This will be added when we run configurations. When we do that, system will generate item cards for all the items defined by the customer and add the missing information in Shopify order lines. Now it's done. So the item number, unit of measure, and additional information that was missing earlier is defined in the line. Here we also have the configuration number. If we drill it down, we'll get to the configuration card. And in this place, we can see all the detailed information that was specified by our customer on the Shopify website. So just to summarize what we saw, we started with the basic sales process with Advanced Product Configurator. Then we looked into the master data that was generated in that process. Afterwards, we reviewed the setup that is behind all that. And at the end, we saw a case study and a more complex scenario where we generated a configuration for the bookshelf and we generated programs for CNC machines. Finally, we saw what we're working on right now, so the integration with Shopify. Summarizing the main benefits I would like to underline here are: the product is really simple, and basically training the customer takes only one day, so it's very simple to implement. It helps to streamline the item creation process. To implement that, there are no programming skills needed. It's all just the setup, all the relations between the attributes and calculation formulas. It's all done as a setup in Business Central. Also, what's important for you, our partners, it is extensible in easy way. So we have a whole set of publishers prepared for you that you can use to extend it with your own extensions. Additionally, it can be easily integrated with other applications thanks to the possibility of moving attribute values to other tables and fields, also to the tables that you added with your per tenant extensions or your official applications.